Well, howdy there, folks. James, Political Friar, coming to you again. I got the LSE hat on, and so we're going to talk about an international relations topic on this one. In particular, we're going to talk about a terrorist attack that happened in Iran. See, this is newsworthy because Iran is usually the sponsor or instigator of terrorist attacks, has been for hundreds over the course of the decades that since the revolution in 1979. But Iran hasn't really suffered terrorist attacks in turn. And this attack in the city of Kerman was absolutely a terrorist attack of the sort of familiar variety. And it's interesting that it was targeted at the Iranian government. Hmm. So, for folks who don't know, two bombs went off in the city of Kerman yesterday, and they were targeting a procession of Iranian civilians who were commemorating the fourth anniversary of the death of General Qasem Soleimani. General Soleimani was the leader of the Revolutionary Guard, and in particular their Quds Force, which is the group of people who actually go out into the region and sponsor terrorists. He helped make the connection between Iran and Hezbollah and the connection between Hamas and Iran. And so he operated for a couple of decades until Donald Trump in the United States ordered him assassinated. And he got blown up 4 years ago. And so this procession was making its way to the cemetery where Soleimani is buried, and a bomb went off, wounding and killing dozens. And the crowd ran away, ran back down the road, back the way that they came. And these people who survived a bombing were milling about 20 minutes later when a bomb went off and killed another number of dozens of these same people who had just survived the first bombing. And it's a classic tactic. The dual bombing is something that we saw in Iraq and Afghanistan regularly. It was terrorists tactic designed to have the effect of the most casualties possible and have the effect of cooling any rescue efforts. See, if there's one bomb, that's fine, then you can go and help the injured. But if there's two bombs, you can't go and help the injured in the same way. And so it sets up further and future attacks to have this structure. And it is something that Iran just hasn't had happen on their soil. So it does beg the obvious question of who did it and why. Now, I have no doubt that Israel will have the finger pointed at them. Israel and Iran are sworn enemies. But this isn't really Israel's MO. Israel does things like what it did yesterday in assassinating a senior Hamas general, but that assassination had four casualties, all of them officers of Hamas, leaders anyway. If they don't have officers, that would make some sense. But they were all leaders, they were not civilians. And there's no doubt that Israel could kill more of these leaders of Hamas like they did in Syria last week. But they seem to do it in a way that minimizes civilian casualties, not maximizes them. And they also seem to be targeting leaders, not civilians. So who would blow up 103 Iranian civilians as they were marching to commemorate Qasem Soleimani? It's a really good question. My guess, my speculation is that it was the Islamic State. Iran and the Islamic State are not friends. IS, the Islamic State, is a dedicated Sunni terrorist organization looking to set up a Sunni caliphate. And Iran is a Shia dominated theocracy. And that divide is enough. And there's no doubt that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, led by Qasem Soleimani, made the Islamic State one of their primary objectives. And they participated in the reduction of the Islamic State and the ending of the Islamic State as a geographic entity. So I think it was probably them who set this up. It's in their tactics, and it is an enemy. It's interesting to see if it continues. The other people that it could be would be domestic resistance in Iran. There have been rolling protests in Iran for years that just haven't really settled all the way down. Most recently, there was a protest that was instigated, or a series of protests instigated because a young woman was detained by the religious police for not wearing her hijab, a headscarf, appropriately, and she died in custody. And that set off, protests all through the country, causing the Iranian police to kill hundreds of protesters. Well, maybe some of those protesters have decided that peaceful protest isn't really going to work. Maybe they've decided to borrow some tactics from those they see around them. And it turns out getting explosives and planting, them and then conducting a terrorist attack is fairly well understood knowledge. Those tactics aren't hard to figure out in the Middle East, and so maybe it was them. I don't know, but it's going to bear watching because this is new. Iran hasn't had a terrorism problem; it's been the terrorism problem, and now we're going to have to see what comes next. Anyway, it's just a thought. Let me know how wrong I am in the comments down below. Leave me a like, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I really appreciate you. Thanks.